We've got some interesting developments in the tensions between the U.S. and Iran today. The New York Times is reporting that the Obama administration has been using its secret communication channels to warn Iran that closing the Strait of Hormuz is a red line and would provoke an American response. In the meantime, Foreign Policy magazine has detailed a series of CIA memos from the Bush administration that have been leaked, which describe Israeli-Mossad posing as CIA to recruit members of Jundullah to wage covert war against Iran. Now, let's keep in mind that all of this information comes from anonymous officials, so we have to figure out what we make of this PR push. Here to discuss with me is Christopher Swift, fellow at the University of Virginia's Law School Center for National Security Law. Christopher, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Good to be back.
So reports of using secret channels to communicate with Iran, do you think that, if that's true, that means that the U.S. is really taking it seriously?
We've had a secret back channels to Iran since the revolution in '79. Some of them are through embassies and some of them are not through embassies. The Iranians carry their water here at the Pakistani embassy. They have a special interest section. The United States does it through Switzerland, the Swiss embassy in Tehran.
But this time they're not doing it through Switzerland, is what they say.
We've always had these back-channel communications. And look, these are very important, not necessarily because they can solve problems, but because having some transparency on both sides can lead people on both sides to take the steps necessary to prevent problems.
So, but do you have any ideas, though, if it's not Switzerland this time that's trying to broker these communication channels? It'd be
inappropriate for me to speculate, but we have had, the United States government has had back-channel communications to Iran, direct and indirect, for a very long time. And when we need them, we use them. They have the same thing with us. When they need to send us a signal or communicate with us, they don't always do it through President Ahmadinejad's office.
I'm curious, too, let's say that they did indeed close down the Strait of Hormuz. Could Iran even do it,
Sure.
with their naval power?
Yep.
And so then what the U.S. is saying is that this would be a red line, that this would have to elicit some type of an American response. Does that mean there would have to be a military response?
Well, the response would be implemented by the military, but it might not necessarily be a violent response. It depends on what Iran did to close the strait. The strait's 35 miles wide. The actual shipping lanes for, what they call post-Panamax supertankers are only about 2 miles wide. From a naval perspective, that's really, really narrow, right? I mean, the New York Times article described it as having a knife fight in a phone booth. So there are a lot of things Iran could do to shut it down, but depending on what they did, I think that's what would determine what the U.S. Navy's response would be. If it's mining, they're going to deploy minesweepers. If, they sink ships in the actual strait itself, I think it's likely that you're going to see the U.S. Navy go after the ships that sank the ships. The question is, how quickly does this sort of thing escalate if it does go military, and what are the consequences? And I think the consequences are pretty clear that it would be short, it would be really nasty, and it would ultimately be very expensive, primarily for Iran.
Well, it seems like there are some efforts in some ways to maybe diffuse something. I'm curious as to what you think about. So suddenly today, Foreign Policy has spoken to a number of former CIA officials, and these memos from the Bush administration have been leaked saying that Israeli-Mossad were posing as CIA agents to, like I said, to try to recruit people to wage covert war against Iran, and that the CIA and the Bush administration really hated it and was really mad at Israel for doing this. What's your take?
Well, look, the fact of the matter is, in espionage, people lie and pretend to be other people in order to get information. We do it, the Russian Federation does it, Israel does it, every country on the planet does it. So we shouldn't be that shocked that this goes on. The timing of these things are interesting, but I don't know if there's enough information available here, and I don't know if the sources are credible enough for us to draw any connections. The connections we can draw is that the value of the Iranian currency is dropping against the U.S. dollar by the hour. The Europeans are more and more likely to implement oil sanctions on Iran. And the Chinese are very worried about what's going on because they get all of their oil from the Persian Gulf, and something going bad in the Strait of Hormuz means the Chinese economy and also Japan's economy will hit the toilet.
So what do you think is really going to happen? I mean, we've had a wide variety from our opinions of guests on our show.
Iran is a state within a state, right? And a lot of people, when they think of Iran, they think of the mullahs and they think of Ahmadinejad. But the fact of the matter is the Iranian Revolution Guard Corps has created its sort of own military corrupt oligarchy within the Iranian state. So when we talk to Iran, or when Iran's making decisions about what it's going to do in foreign affairs, we're not sure whether that's the Iranian state or whether that's the Guard Corps. So one of the questions I have, and one of the things that would be very interesting to know, is whether our back-channel communications are, in fact, to the state, including the Supreme Leader, and whether the Supreme Leader actually has the kind of control that we hoped he would have, or would hope he would have, over the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps.
I'm totally with you there in curiosity. I would love to know all of this. And, you know, clearly there's something that the administration wants us to know. If you have government officials leaking stories like this to the New York Times, that there are some kind of communications going on through these channels right at this moment. Christopher, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Pleasure.